myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Friday night, which means it's 3 Amigos night, so it's a big welcome to Mitch and a big welcome to Steve. Ian Mearns should be joining us at some point once he stopped saving the world with politics down in Westminster. I do want to dedicate this particular episode of the 3 Amigos to a good friend of mine who were lost recently, Big Jackie Graham from Felon, or should I say The Felon, which is where I lived best part of my life, somewhere where I've got a lot of friends and somewhere where I love going to whenever I have time to see the friends who I grew up with. And Big Jackie was always somebody who had a bit of advice, always somebody who would get a pint in for you or whoever you were with, and would always take one back. But I had many hours of socialising with Jackie as a young'un, and he was always, as I say, somebody who had a big opinion. He was louder than life, and I think the fact that over 1,000 people turned up today at St Patrick's in Felon tells you a lot about the man. So Big Jackie, we'll miss you, and certainly be raising a glass for you over the weekend, mate. And been a long day for me, so I won't be doing match day live. Chris Hall's taking the team over today, and he will be running the match day live. I'm not even going to watch the match tonight, and the reason being not because of the funeral, not because of Big Jackie, but really because I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to watch Newcastle tonight. I'm absolutely sick to the back teeth of it. I think the atmosphere on Twitter has been terrible. I haven't seen anything directed to me this week, which is a surprise. But I've seen some of the poison and some of the awful stuff that other people have had to put up with this week. I bit my tongue. I've bit my finger. I haven't responded to it. I haven't wanted to get drawn in. It's the last thing I needed, really, to be drawn into stuff like that. But Newcastle United and its fan base is split. It's a divisive place, and Twitter is an awful place at times. It's a great place for so much positivity, but it's all down to the football and the football team and the football manager and the football owner, and it's as simple as that. And sometimes you just need a break from it. And tonight, I'm not going to waste a couple of hours of my life watching Aston Villa probably tear Newcastle a new arsehole. So for me, it's a chance to boycott a game, and it's the first one I've boycotted since Arsenal at home. Although this is a cyber boycott or a TV boycott or whatever you want to call it. I did join the boycott Arsenal campaign, and I did boycott that game. And I've got to say, me and my pals, when we did that, we had a thoroughly great day, afternoon and day, and the football didn't spoil it because we weren't actually there. And I've got to be honest, I think a lot more people will be doing that once COVID lifts and people go back. And I think if we continue in the same vein with the same manager and the same owner, and we don't get the takeover that we want, then I genuinely feel Newcastle United will lose a lot more than the 10,000 that they lost last time. What they're going to do then? Give 20,000 tickets away? God knows. But that got that off my chest. Rest in peace, Jackie. And as always, we'll leave it to you in the chat, and we'll leave it to Mitch and Steve to take us on the journey for the next couple of hours. We will finish slightly earlier tonight because I do want to give Chris the chance to start match day live at 7:30. Where do we go, Mitch? Where do we start?
It's a real good question, mate. And one of the things that I think was one of the journalists, might have even been Andrew Musgrove, said on Twitter this week about apathy creeping into the fan base. And I think I've said on here before that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. Apathy is the killer. Apathy is the thing that will kill the club. And I've had a few conversations myself this week with them. It started with expat fans. Started with a lad called Simon, who's across in San Diego, who used to be in Washington DC, used to organise the Washington Mags, and he says that the Washington Mags have gone from 20 to 30 who turn up for every game to 3 or 4.
Wow.
And he hasn't even got involved with the San Diego lot because he can't be asked. And I'm hearing the same from lads in the Philippines. I'm hearing the same from the lads in Malaysia. I'm hearing the same from lads in Australia, New Zealand. I'm hearing the same from some of our lot out here in the UAE and across the Gulf. The only place that seems to be getting the mags together in some sort of large group in the Middle East at the moment seems to be the door mags, but that's because, as spiky as he is, Roy, who organises everything out there, keeps everybody going and keeps everybody motivated. It's what he did when he was here, organising lads in Dubai. But what killed me this week, and I brought it up on Twitter, was seeing my mate Chris Betts. And I'm sorry, Chris, I think I hide you in the firing line a little bit. I think you ended up with some divots hanging on your coattails, unfortunately, such as the players. But to see Chris and I gone back years, and we've done miles. And I'm not talking about easy miles under Keegan. I'm talking about getting humped at Southend. I'm talking about getting humped at Oxford and Cambridge, and it might as well have been university teams. I'm talking about a lad who I've been at pre-season friendlies in Dundee with, and Champions League games all over Europe with, and everything in between. And to see him saying, "Nah, I've jacked it until Bruce goes," wow, that actually broke my heart. And I think of our group when we were going here, there, and everywhere and doing daft shit like that. Jamie Fender, he's going to rugby now. He's just electively decided enough was enough, and he's got to sell a season ticket for the rugby. Crazy. I see the group that I used to hang around with dwindle while I've been out of the country. I think if I wandered into the bodega pre-match even now, and what God knows what it'd be like when crowds are allowed back, I think I'd get a shock. And I think we're having one of those seminal moments that happens in my fan base every now and again. It's the Gordon Lee, Malcolm McDonald moment, the one that me and Steve experienced when we were going around with NUFC, NUST roadshows, finding generations of fans where there was a turning point, there was a cut. Steve, you sit with me, Dad, and in that row, there's 2 tickets now. We used to have 12 tickets in that row. Yeah. There used to be 12 of us. That's what's happened under Ashley. And he has a degree of blame. Like we were talking about on Dubai Eye this week with Chris McCarty, when we did a little section with him, where's the blame? Where you start at the top, and then you go to Charnley, who's now AWOL, and now Bruce has been the final straw for so many people. And to hear Steve saying, "Nah, I'm having a night off. I'm not doing 2 hours of my life with that shit." That, again, wow. Is this what we're being driven to? And sadly, it seems to be.
Yeah, what's your thoughts, Steve? I mean, there's been many games, I've got to be honest, in this lockdown period, especially where I could have done something else. Do you know what I mean? Like they used to say on Why Don't You, and we'll all remember that programme. Going to find something less boring to do instead. But yeah, I mean, it's just...
That's a generationally niche, I think, Steve.
Well, it is, and this is I think I have to be honest. This is a generationally niche thing. I mean, just that cartoon of the foot going through the television is probably how most Newcastle fans feel when they sit and watch Steve Bruce's team. So, but yeah, I mean, it's sad, isn't it? I mean, Chris Betts is a great lad. I've known him many years. He's written for fanzines, he's sold fanzines, he's travelled the miles, like you've said. But
he was there at the foundation of the trust. He did all sorts for work under NSC and helped input some of the ideas for what we were going to do.
That's right. Been one of those people who's wasted his time with me, you, and Steve, who sat in a room full of about 100 people who were all moaning and groaning to each other. But apart from the Newcastle Supporters Club, which eventually became the trust, nothing really has progressed. NUFC Fans United had a degree of success, but other than that, the rest of it's more like a sounding board. It's like a therapy session whenever we've gone to these things.
That's right, and what Mitch is saying and what you guys are saying, it's not sort of exclusive to you. The group of lads that I've been going to match with for years and years. I think out of a group of 10, for example, I would say 4 are sitting with season tickets. The rest have jacked in over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years, where they've just said enough is enough. Lads who have done the hard miles, lads who have travelled all around Europe, lads who have travelled all around the country. Lads who have been going for, onwards of 45, 50 years, and they're just going, I'm not going to bother anymore. I'll pick and choose my games, or I'll not even bother, as you say, watching it on TV. I'll be I'll admit, I feel exactly the same at times, Steve. There are games where I've switched off. There are games where I've just walked away and just thought, I'm not going to bother watching this anymore. There's something better to do. I'll take the dog for a walk, I'll go and get him to pee alongside Steve Bruce's front door, Take me angst out on it in that way, Sorry, Steve. But you know what I mean? It's a crazy situation, and you're right. Chris is a perfect example of someone. He didn't just do the hard yards, but he never missed. He never missed a roadshow that we travelled to. He was involved right from the start, all the way through, and he's a smashing lad. And it pains you to hear people like Chris and people like some of my pals who are just going, I'm not going to bother anymore. I've got pals who don't go to the match and come and meet with afterwards in the Strawberry, and then we'll carry on down to the Irish Centre for a few pints. There's that, and you're quite right, Steve, in terms of what you said earlier. You have a damn good afternoon in the pub. I've got another pal who'll sit there and listen to it on the radio but won't go in, or he'll come down at 5 o'clock and meet us. And that's where we've got to, and this is the sleepwalk that the club just doesn't understand. They just kind of get their head around. They think that everything's sort of rosy in the garden if we manage to pick up 3 points tonight, forgetting, of course, where we were. Interestingly, where we were when we played Crystal Palace at the back end of November, 6 points off the top, 4 points from fourth place, a win. And then COVID hit, and straight away, that's the excuse, isn't it? Today that we've heard, we're doing all right, well, COVID hit. And the wheels have just come off. The wheels have come off, and this is what happens with managers like Pardew, managers like Steve Bruce. When the wheels come off, it's not just one wheel or two, is it? It's all four, and the spare's got a puncture as well. That's how we end up in the situation that we are. And the people who bail them out every single time are the fans, but I think a lot of fans are going, not anymore. And you can tell that, Steve, by the number of people on social media who are saying, you know what, I think we deserve to go down. And that's something that I've never, ever said, and something that I don't like to hear, because I feel as though that's blaming the fans again, and the fans are not the problem. The fans have been screaming out, telling the club what the problem is for 18 months, if not longer, and yet nobody's listening. And it's only in the last week where we've had people like Danny Murphy popping up going, I think there's a bit of a problem there. A bit of a problem to do with the playing, manager or the playing staff or whatever.
We've still got some people in the media blaming the toxic fan base. We can't even get in the ground. We can't even get in the ground, man. And yet we're being, having stuff like that chucked at us still. Yeah. And this is the point we were making months ago. We could see what was happening on the pitch, and everybody is saying, look at the results, be pleased because look at the results. And when you were riding well up, and we knew what was coming, because you could see it on the pitch, just playing football intelligence in our fan base, we're looking at it saying, when my luck goes, this is going to be bad. And it has been. And now you're right, you've got like Danny Murphy suddenly going, it's bad. I think they're in trouble. We saw that coming weeks ago, pal. And you told us we were stupid for saying it. Irritating.
Very irritating. Chris Collins says, wasn't it better when the common consensus amongst Newcastle fans was decided in the pub, not social media, then you just chose which crowd or which pub you drank in? I mean, Mitch, I've watched it this week. We've spoke about it many times. We did the Think Before You Tweet campaign. Been vile this week at times, with certain people being picked out once again. And, it's never ending. It's relentless on our timeline. For no good reason.
Yeah, it is. As I've probably said before, for a lot of it for me is water off a duck's back. I don't really take a lot of it. If there's anything directed towards me, actually these days I tend not to say it because I've got most of it muted and or blocked, So what? But not everybody's like that, and not everybody's able to be like that, and I understand that. The ability to hide anonymously behind an account on social media, in particular Twitter. Not one of them. It comes back to the age-old argument about, if you were in the pub, would you say that to his face? And would you dare? Would you dare? And they wouldn't. And it just seems to be a big free for all. And also things like tongue in cheek comments can get exploded out of context because there's no subtlety or nuance.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think there almost seems to be some individuals who kind of let you have a bit of a laugh.
I watched one today, which you and Stu Penman got involved in, like, and it was I read it back. I had to read it back to see where this whole thing had started from, and it was literally a team selection, which then basically just spiraled into like an insult, and then why do that, and then other people jumping in. And I'm thinking, I mean, understand that some people might be out of work, some people might be furloughed, but I just don't understand why at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the focus of somebody's life is to have a pop at somebody, and it started off quite pleasant, but it was simply down to fans falling out over a position or players being selected for the team tomorrow. It was an opinion, for God's sake. Let it go.
Right. And it frustrates me as well because I can just see it coming. It's the lights at the end of the tunnel that is a train. You just see it, and you're like, oh, here we go. I just kind of be chewed with it.
I mean, I know Stu's bald. Stu's bald, isn't he? But I mean, he looks nothing like Van Gerwen, the darts player. I'm bald. But, I don't look anything like Van Gerwen, the darts player. It's just one of them things.
I have to say, when he's out for a pint with me, he gets worse insults than that off of the group that we drink with.
I wish I was a penny behind. I wish I was a penny behind Van Gerwen. Like, I wish I was a penny behind Stu Penman with all these 3-1 bets he's had on over the years.
I know.
But yeah, Steve, it's something we've touched on. I don't want to draw on it too much longer, but it just again out of control, isn't it? And the sooner this kind of behaviour is clamped down on some of the more serious tweets that go out, then the better, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Steve. It's a bunch of kids. It's a bunch of childish playground spats that just have generated in, as you say, this horrible bile, this horrible atmosphere, and it's not doing anybody any good. I just blocked. I've spent God knows how long blocking accounts, blocking people, blocking individuals, and then now I'm at the point where if I don't know the name of the person, I don't know who they are, then I'll block them as well. So, but if I don't know that it's Steve Wraith, but it's Steve W, I might block them. Unless I know who the particular person is, and I think that anonymity is half the problem, if not 3/4 of the problem, because the fact that these people hide, and then when you do call them out, when you do say, well, you even get DMs from people like that, and they'll say, well, they'll start having a go at you, and they'll why aren't you saying this, and why are you doing that? And then you go, well, I'll tell you what, I'll communicate with you if I know who you are. Tell us your name, tell us where you live, tell us what what your interests are. I'll get to know you, and then I'll communicate with you. But until then, don't get annoyed with me because I've put a block on you, or don't get annoyed with me because I've muted you, or that somebody else has put a block on you who knows who you think is because I've told them to, or something like that. It's just crazy, absolutely crazy. And I think there are elements in the fan base who are stoking this up to such a degree that the poison, some of them probably don't even realise the poison that they're creating. Some of them do, mind. Some of them are doing it on purpose. We know that because you can tell who it is, because you can tell a little group, they'll pounce on one person. One of them will pounce on one tweet that somebody says, they'll respond, and then they're all in. And it's the same people time and time and time again. The same groups, the same individuals who will pounce on anyone for the sake of it. And they do it, it's like hyenas in a pack, Steve. It really is. And it's so pointless. It's so ridiculous. But it's ruining the good name of Newcastle United fans at times, because let's face it, we all think that we are the best supporters in the country, we are the best supporters in the world. You know what? Anyone looking at Twitter would go, you know what? You're the most horrible bunch of supporters in the world. That's what they would say if it only went by Twitter.
Microphone, Steve.
It's because the missus has come in with the plates and I didn't want the banging of plates to overact. That's why I put the microphone on mute.
Greece tonight, Steve.
We're playing in Greece, yeah. She might throw them down on the floor for a Greek wedding. It's look, from my perspective, we've got the food bank, we've had war flags, lots of positives done from Twitter. So it's not always the downside, you know what I mean? There is some positives. But look, we've had to say on it. Let's move on. Toby says, I'm only in my 30s, so don't have the years you lads have. But is this current era the worst we've had? Or at least in your lifetimes? I've never known the fan base like this. I mean, social media certainly emphasises this. It certainly, it makes it look like a bigger issue, I suppose. But there's always been fallouts amongst fans, hasn't there, Neil?
There always has been. You even used to get that in the Gallagher end between the corner and the scoreboard. You used to get it between the Gallagher end and the Leazes end.
Yeah.
If you remember, there was a time they used to sell the half and half Rangers and Celtic hats.
I remember that.
There's always been funny little cliques and groups within the fan base, and but that actually, for me, used to drive a lot of positivity out of it. Used to create something extra, something different. It didn't seem at the time or feel at the time as divisive. But is that because when you're in with your little group of mates and you're doing your thing, you then choose which pub you drink in, there's not the interactivity the way social media allows. I don't know. In terms of is it as bad as it's ever been, I can promise you it's not as bad as I've ever seen it on the pitch. I've seen worse than this.
What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I've definitely seen worse on the pitch. I've seen worse from the manager. I've sat there trying to tear my hair out. God knows how many times, but dozens of managers that we've had at St James's Park. But in terms of the atmosphere among the fan base, I think it's all down to social media, Steve. As Neil says, you can choose the pubs you want to drink in, so it means you can choose the people you want to socialise with. You can choose the people you want to stand with, or you could on the terraces if you wanted to stand on the left-hand side of the Gallagher end or the right-hand side of the Gallagher end under the scoreboard, or if you wanted to stand in the corner, or if you preferred the paddocks, or you preferred the east stand and sitting down, whatever it happened to be. But now it all seems to be, those issues aren't there. The issues are entirely down to social media, and it's not even a generational thing. It's just a horrible bunch of nasty people thing.
It's fueling a toxicity that I've not seen before.
Yes.
Even if you go to something as simple as the comments page on the Chronicle, wow, some of the things you see written in there, it's like, whoa, it's just an article in the Chronicle, man. Yeah. And people, I think, probably don't get that for somebody like me now, going through the articles in the Chronicle, it gives that sense of feeling at home that you don't get in other ways, And then you get I just ignore the comments bits now. Just don't even read them.
Yeah, I think read them. What's interesting, Neil, you mentioned there the media. I've never known a time, I must admit. I mean, there were people who would fall out or not be happy with Doug Mosscrop because of some of his tips in the Journal. There used to be people who weren't necessarily felt as though Alan Oliver was that popular, and there was various journalists, but they would get a little bit of jip, a little bit of comment, and that type of thing. But never like it is now, where on social media, journalists, no matter what they say, they can be the best thing since sliced bread one week, and then they can be ripped apart the following week. Whether it's Mark Douglas, whether it's Liam, whether it's Luke Edwards, whether it's any of them, that it just seems to be that they just seem to be number one target at times. The press.
Some of the things I've seen written and thrown at all the guys from the press. Vile isn't even the word for it.
Yeah.
Some of them had some of the most disgraceful things chucked at them, and that's coming from people who would be, say, for example, both sides of any division. In terms of let's take Bruce for example. It's quite clear where Luke Edwards stands on Steve Bruce, And whilst I could quite happily sit and debate it and disagree with Luke on a number of occasions, I wouldn't say some of the things that I've seen thrown at him. And equally, Craig Hope I've seen a couple of real horrible little tweets at Craig Hope since he wrote the article about Richie and Bruce, from people who are obviously invested in either the manager or the club or what have you, and don't agree with that story being leaked in that way. And I mean horrible words you wouldn't use lightly, or you shouldn't use lightly. And God, some of the things I've seen written about Mark Douglas, you couldn't get a nicer guy. I mean, and he reports wonderfully fairly, in my opinion, about Newcastle United. And yet, God, some of the things written about Mark, they're horrendous.
Yeah, get some stick. A lot of journalists do. Bill Smith is again talking about a topic which has been quite prevalent on Twitter today, and that's, could we swap Chris Wilder for Bruce? I mean, Wilder's got the bullet. Didn't do very well this season, did he? Had a great season last season with Sheffield United, but simple answer for me, I wouldn't take Chris Wilder for Newcastle. The job needs somebody who knows the area, understands what the club's all about. We've been through this many times, I think, on the show. I understand why people want to link other managers like Wilder, like Eddie Howe, but I just don't see it. It needs somebody like a Keegan, like a Robson, like a Shearer, people who understand the area, Steve. And it's it's not a job for the faint-hearted. It's not a job for the big name. We've done that. We've been there and done it in the last 30 years. We've had some of the biggest names in football who have fallen flat on their face. Kenny Dalglish, yes, he got to a second place finish, got to a cup final, but he destroyed the entertainers team. It's got to be said. Ruud Gullit came in, thought he could sit on a deck chair and take training, and fly up and down and not actually live in the area. Again, fell flat on his face. Yeah. The list is endless. The people who really do hit it off here are people who get it, who understand what the area is about, understand the fans, and buy into the city. Rafa Benitez, Bobby Robson, Kevin Keegan, Joe Harvey. Rafa wasn't born in Newcastle. Kevin Keegan had Geordie relatives but wasn't born here. Joe Harvey was a Yorkshireman. So Bobby was born in the northeast. But they got it, didn't they, Steve? That's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about those managers, the superstar managers, the struggles that they had. Chris Wilder is an interesting case in point. Chris Wilder's problem was that second season syndrome, first of all. Also, not being backed by his owner. Yeah. He wanted full control. We've heard all of this before, haven't we? Where giving someone control, where he wants to put a director of football in over the top of him, where the results don't go well second time round, where they don't invest in players, and the players that do invest were not good enough. Chris Wilder's big problem was that when they in the summer, and probably not his fault because of everything that went on COVID-wise, but the club didn't strengthen. They did not strengthen at that particular point where the club needed strengthening. For some reason, people in that club and possibly himself thought that, we got through the first season, we did really well. There's nothing to stop these players doing it the second time round. And it's like the fatal error, because we all know that when that happens, everybody else is stepping above you. Everybody else is investing, or majority of them are investing. They've looked at what's happening around them, and those owners have invested to move them, because it's a constantly moving ladder that you're on, and people pass you on that ladder. And Chris Wilder and Sheffield United, they didn't just get seen through and seen out. They just and sussed out. They were just passed. The quality of the squad wasn't there. He lost a very, very good goalkeeper that they didn't have the guts to put a ridiculous offer in for Manchester United to take. So there was his first problem. And from that moment onwards, the club just spiraled down. And is he a good manager? He's been in the Premier League. You could possibly argue that he is. Is he a man manager? Certainly could say he's a man manager from what we've seen, the way that he talks. But could he take Newcastle United on? I very, very much doubt it. Very much doubt it.
Yeah, I
See,
agree.
See, this is where you guys are thinking long term, and I'm just thinking for the next 11 games. and then I'll think long term. And would I take him over Bruce in the current situation? I probably would. I really genuinely probably would. Yeah, I would. I would.
Why would you do that, Mitch?
Because when his teams played well last season, he had them organised and they knew what they were doing.
Right.
And I think this season as well, he's had the teams organised and they've known what they were doing. But because they haven't gone up in quality, because they've stood still, they've gone backwards.
Yeah.
Which we've experienced. You know, we've experienced owners from the Middle East, or potential owners from the Middle East, just like that. Remember when we went in with BZJ and we looked at that plan, in inverted comma, and they just had like big names in random roles. And you go, is that a director of football, or is that a sporting director? Yeah. And how does he interact with your head coach, and who's making the decisions? And we just got somebody sat there blinking like Homer Simpson, not saying a word.
Yeah. And what would your role be? And where would you be living? And what would your day-to-day involvement in the football club be? Etc. Etc.
All of that.
You know. Yeah.
So if they, you know, bearing in mind they've got a Saudi prince. I mean, that just there was no blueprint, was there? There was just nothing. It was just names. It was just like, well, they're big names in football. That'll work, won't it? Well, no, won't necessarily.
I think the Luke Edwards article that he did though this week, where he talked about the gamble, and I had a lot of time for the article. The gamble that Ashley's taking and has taken in the past, and the when he's flipped, it's failed. You know, he flipped, he panicked, he flipped. Too late, obviously, with Shearer. He did exactly the same with Benitez, and we went down. On the occasions when he hasn't, and he's decided to stick, as Luke pointed out, it's kind of worked for him in a couple of occasions. But the problem is, I see what you're saying with the 11 games, but I have a tendency to agree with Luke and what he was putting out there, which was that, you know what, with 11 games to go, is it too late? Is it too late? Is it better the devil you know? Can they let this?
Because it has.
Because there is that element that I was thinking, which was, you know what, we've gone 18 games, we've only had 2 wins. At a certain point, and that's what this is what I'm hanging my hat on. This is what I'm holding out for. This is the prayer mat that I've got, that I'm kneeling on at the moment. That it has to break. The luck has to change. You have to. At a certain point in time, you're going to get that win. Is it going to be in game 21? Or game 25 or game 27 or whatever it happens to be? Where is it coming? And I'm hoping that the manager's setting the teams up, and this is where my naivety comes in, that he's setting the teams up to get the 3 points. Sadly, what I watched on Sunday at West Brom was he set the team up for a point, and the other dinosaur did exactly the same, and it was no good to either of them in a way. Probably, I listened to the post-match sort of rabble who they had on, who know absolutely nothing about Newcastle United, and I listened to them and around the table, and they're saying, well, it was probably better for Newcastle. Well, it was for what, an hour and a half, 2 hours until the full result came in. That shows you. And they shouldn't have been coming out with dross like that. They should just said, well, no, 3 points. You go into a game for 3 points.
I was just glad
with one. It's not really good.
I was just glad I had the Arabic commentary on for most of it, because they can make a 0-0 draw sound exciting. Oh man, you know, I totally get what you're saying about devil, you know, and all that. I just wish I had a semblance of a clue that the guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I understand that.
From his comments, he just doesn't, you know. And then we've obviously also this week had the Eddie Howe rumours, which, you know, he was coming into Newcastle and blah blah blah. Which I believe he did. But then what? Where did he go from there? And what was the plan? Because it doesn't seem like it was anything to do with Newcastle United.
No, nothing to do with Newcastle. I think we're north of the border with that one.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
which, that would make sense because Celtic do seem to like to do their business out of sight and in undercover. Because, like for example, the day Rafa came, everybody knew he was at the ground because you cannot hide him walking into St James's Park while McLaren's still taking training. You can't. I'm quite sure Celtic cannot hide anybody walking up the steps at Celtic Park. So I'm quite sure any preliminary talks or discussions are being done outside of the city of Glasgow, shall we say?
Yeah. I was going to say, Mitch, on behalf of any of our friends that are having the Celtic #1 supporters club that operate out of the Irish Centre, he wasn't in the Irish Centre this week either. He didn't pop in there. They weren't having talks there, by the way. So it is still shut.
Absolute classic. Absolute classic. Lots of great points coming in, lots of support as well, which is always greatly appreciated. And the Wilder thing is certainly capturing people's imaginations. Paul Hodgins said Wilder would only be an option in the Championship, but there is no vision to what we want as a club, which is a good point. Yeah. Gary Milligan says he'd rather have Gene Wilder coming in as the Barry Hogan says
we've got Uncle Buck, haven't we? So.
Well, and we've had Willy Wonka at the ground before as well, which you still get the blame for, which wasn't you.
Graham Cansdale. Barry Hogan says Arthur Cox came from Chesterfield with very little top-level experience, but was a class manager, which is a good point. Darren says Eddie Howe, Chris Wilder would do well at Newcastle if we had the right owner. Roger Cook says, does Jones have that passion, Steve? I mean, Graham Jones, I think we all felt was the rather, devious plan laid by, Ashley and Charnley to push Bruce out the door. It hasn't worked. Bruce is still here, and now we've got more coaches than Go Ahead Northern.
That's true. That is true. And they all seem to have taken a seat in the stands as well. I don't know about you guys, but there was very little activity on in the technical area that we saw on Sunday, was there? We saw a little bit of it, but it leads to me to wonder what the other two coaches are doing now, to be perfectly honest. What is the role of Clements and Agnew, other than putting out the cones? And to a certain extent, from what we're hearing, the Bruce situation seems to be that he spends the time in the office. He's now the office clerk, whether that's true or not. But this is what we're at. This is where we're at. But yeah, that initial sort of bout of enthusiasm that had, and that little bounce that we got from Jones, which was like that Everton performance. But it's died simply because we haven't got Wilson up front. We haven't got Almiron doing the running, and we haven't got players with confidence anymore. They're playing without a will. These are players that I'm convinced can get us out of it if they're given the right tactics and given the right opportunity. And whether it's that leadership quality that we're lacking. We're lacking it in the dressing room. We're lacking it in the boardroom. And we're lacking it at management level, and nobody's willing to take the bull by the horns and actually do something about it. And we've used that word sleepwalking. Dear me, are we not sleepwalking? In all quarters, in all areas, we seem to be sleepwalking. And it's time for people to stand up. We said it a couple of weeks ago, Steve. It's time for players to stand up and be counted. Yep. Not just arguing and fighting and not just having a pop at the manager, but actually doing it on the pitch. And I know some of them aren't being picked, for whatever reason. And again, that's down to the manager. We're not seeing the Longstaffs. We're not seeing Richie. They're not getting a run out. We're not seeing Andy Carroll. We're not seeing Dwight Gale. They're not getting a run out. And when they do get a run out, they're either put on for 30 seconds or they're shoved out onto the right wing. And
we're probably not going to see. Probably not going to see them at the minute because I think you've just mentioned all the ones who are on Steve Bruce's potential mole hit list, which is still on the hunt for. It's a joke. But again, it comes down to a lack of a cohesive plan from top to bottom within the club, and like Steve rightly says, more coaches than Armstrong bloody Galley. It's just ridiculous. And again, Bruce's ego was certainly hit by bringing Jones in. Jones was obviously meant to be the sticking plaster in the dressing room, and that hasn't lasted very long, you know. And you know, come back to that shambles where he basically blamed Richie for not getting the message across. Well, hang on, there's you and 4 or 5 coaches in there who should have been also working on that. It's not down to a player to carry your messages onto the pitch.
You know, you talk about the mole. I mean, it's 10 days now at least, isn't it, since this started? And we were told before the last game, we're told in the middle of last week, we're told last Friday at the press conference that it was forgotten about, it was all done and dusted. We are concentrating. This
and
week,
it obviously isn't.
Yesterday's press conference, we're told they've opened an investigation. There's a committee being set up to try and find out who it is. I'm thinking, move on. This is where the leadership, somebody at the top of that football club should have turned around.
That'll be Lee Marshall, is it? Because he does everything else.
Well, yeah, but somebody
probably.
Needed to get forget about this, lads. If I hear this mentioned once more among you, then you know what? I'll string you all up. You know, I'll fine you all. I'll give you all a fortnight's wages. You know, fine. That's what I'll do. It needs a leader like that at the club to go. You know, not to turn around and go, right, well, 10, 11, 12 days later, we're going to set a committee up, lads, and we're going to try and find this. This isn't a social club. This isn't like an annual general meeting or a quarterly meeting or whatever, you know. We're still bleating on about how crap the turn was. You know, this is ridiculous.
Steve,
the turn's pretty poor.
How do they not know? It's vaguely common knowledge. We know.
I don't know. Honestly, don't know. I honestly don't know how they don't know. And you know what? I think it's because there's probably at least a dozen of them in there. If the truth,
Steve, you've mentioned it. For everybody out there, right? We're not going to sit and blurt it out, but Steve's mentioned his name tonight, right? We know. We're being told.
Yeah. Exactly. It's crazy. Okay.
Sakes, man.
As always, we'll have a few. We have a few. We have a few things to do tonight. It is Friday night. It is 3 Amigos night. So we'll start with Mitch's tune lookalikey. Tune lookalikey. As always, Mitch scours the internet or relies on people sending him these pictures. So who have we got?
I've got to say, I'm grateful to John from QTech for this one. He sent me this. I'd have missed this one, and I loved it. And it's Jermaine Foster, the lad who's in the new Coming to America 2 film, which I haven't seen, but according to Twitter, it's crap. But that is fantastic.
Yeah.
He's even in like a stereotypical French shirt.
Very good,
yes.
Very good, and of course, very very apt because that's where he is. ASM's in France again. The club didn't even know.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. And Steve, you know, Steve tweeted about this and got and again had a few little hand grenades chucked at him. But why are you talking about that? He's injured and da. Yeah, he is, and that's totally fine. But the club didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's your tune lookalike for this week. Yeah, I mean, that is just, again, lack of communication.
It just shows the lack of leadership. Nobody, if he wants to go home, spend time with his family, he's recovering from an injury, he's got a personal trainer or a injury specialist he likes to work with in France, nobody has a problem with that. Because if he's doing the rehab with the person he's happy with, he's going to come back quicker. But it's the fact that it turns out, by certainly very credible accounts, the club initially didn't know what the hell he was doing. And that, there you go. Newcastle United under Steve Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. I think, unfortunately, we're always going to be looking at other teams' results and hanging our hat on them doing worse than us. I mean, that's where we're at, Steve, isn't it? You know, as Jonathan says, we are literally now looking at Fulham, looking at Brighton and going, God, we hope that they have a bad spell.
Yeah, and possibly Burnley as well. I mean, you know, Burnley are only 3 points above us, and I mentioned before about how you hang your hat on something and you pray. I'm now at the point where I'm also hanging my hat on a somebody always drops, somebody always suddenly hits a wall. And
Liverpool.
We've hit the wall weeks and weeks ago. So the law of averages tells you that we're gonna move. We're gonna get something. But there are clubs there that will hit the wall and will suddenly find themselves dragged into something that weren't expecting. And Burnley are one of those teams. I mean, they're 3 points above us, sitting on 30 points. You've got Brighton, who are sitting below us, playing, and everybody tells me that Brighton are playing quite well, but they can't score goals. I'm told that Fulham are suddenly a team rejuvenated, and a manager rejuvenated, and a club rejuvenated, and we've seen them go on a nice little run. Can they sustain it? Will that carry on? Is that the sort of momentum that will keep them going? I think West Brom are down. I think West Brom are down dead. We know that Sheffield United are. The other club that I thought was going to struggle and we could possibly drag down with was Crystal Palace. But you know what? It was when they beat were a couple of weeks ago that I suddenly thought, you know what? Are we that bad? Are we that bad that we made that Palace performance look good? Because it wasn't a very good performance by Palace. And they hadn't been pulling up trees. They hadn't been playing very well. And they were without the star man. And the manager seems to be rocking it on the touchline, as though he's one step away from an old people's home, And as much as I like the guy and as much as I admire him that at 71 and he's still working and he's managing a Premier League football club with all the pressures that brings, I thought their number was up this season. But I think they've probably just done enough to not get caught up in it. So I'm watching Burnley's result, and I'm watching Fulham's result, and I'm watching Brighton's result. Quite frankly, 3 teams that I would never normally pay any attention to, if I'm perfectly honest. Teams that I know very, very little about over the last couple of years. Teams who I might be able to rattle off 4 or 5 players from each of their squads. So probably the 4 players that I would rattle off from Brighton's squads probably left 2 years ago as well. To be perfectly honest, I probably wouldn't even notice. But that's what it's come to. We're watching those results. We're going to play a game tonight, and then straight away we're going to, as somebody pointed out on Twitter, the weekend's ruined already. Before the weekend started, it's been ruined because we're playing on a Friday night. But this is Newcastle United. I shouldn't be looking at results of Fulham, Burnley, and Brighton. I shouldn't be worried about those 3 clubs. I should be worried about the results with clubs like Everton and Leicester. They're the clubs that I should be looking at. And Chelsea, I should be looking at those if history is before pre Abramovich. That's where I should be. I should be looking at them, and I should be competing with those. And I should be thinking, you know what? I can also take points off Man United, or I can take points off Arsenal, or take points off Tottenham. In fact, I've always considered us a far better football team and football club than Tottenham. And that's another thing that sticks in my throat, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, people asking if we're going to put the team sheet up. Yeah, as soon as we see it at 7 o'clock, we will get it up. So don't worry, we can pick that apart. I mean, you can't even predict it now, Mitch, can you? The team sheet. People are asking, what do you think we'll do? Jason Carter says he saw reports about Fraser and Joe Linton up front.
Look at that. You've never been able to predict the team sheet and all the formation all season for me. Steve Bruce's random generator. And I think he uses a wheel of fortune and a one-eyed cat to pick the team. Who knows? And he flip-flops, and he's done this in the last 3 weeks. He's contradicted himself twice. He's gone from, it's not about the formation, it's the players, and then he's gone from that to about sticking with a formation that works. And it's like, well, which is it? Which is it? And that's what gives me little confidence, because just there's no clarity, there's no organisation, there's no understanding of what role somebody's been asked to do. I've seen people talking about Gale. yeah, he ended up getting stuck out on the right wing, and then last week he was being asked to play at the top of the diamond in a false 9 when he's a 9. You know, he's not a false 9; he's a 9. Yeah. So play him as a 9. You know, it's so. How do you understand? It's almost like the Sphinx's riddle. How we're gonna line up, and what formation are we gonna play, and which square peg is he gonna hammer into a round hole this week? Mm-hmm. And that's the. I would love if I could understand some of the decisions he makes from a football point of view, which comes back to the ludicrous 2 false 10s comment, you know, from the Sheffield United game. That seemed to be some people's breaking point. Going back further in the season, some people's breaking point, it turns out, from conversations I've had this week, that was the 5-2 Leeds game, was some people's breaking point. You know, yeah.
Jason Carter put that up, Steve. I presume you've just altered your microphone. I could hear you fine, but maybe it's just people at home couldn't hear you. It wasn't the first comment either. So
I've used the iPad today, and I think I've got the iPod resting. I don't know why the laptop couldn't connect, so I'm using the iPad, and I've lifted it up a little bit because I'm resting it on the front of the laptop. So I've lifted it up a bit so that if I'm on the microphone, then at least I'm giving it a little bit of an opportunity to hear us. I hope you can hear us.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers, mate. Well, I can hear you fine, so it didn't even strike with me.
Yeah.
Ferry Hill Marks, thanks, mate. He's donated £1.99 to the show. Thank you very much, mate. Well, I tell you what, that'll go towards the kitty for when we go back to Pop World after the first home game that we can go back to, mate, because I know how much you love Pop World. I'll definitely pop in there and see you, Chris, and the lads. That'll be a messy one, that first match back. Guaranteed.
For just £1.99. You can help a member of NUFC Matters have a pre-match point.
We'll have to convert some of it into your currency across in your place, mate, so we can get you some Dubai currency, mate, whatever it is.
Emirati dirhams, mate.
And I have been sent a message by Stu Penman saying that, obviously, you noticed the comment before saying that he grew his hair back. I didn't think that was hair. Has he been to Turkey for a transplant or something, Mitch?
No, he's always had it, man. Get him to talk about the reason why he shaved his hair off.
I'm not being funny, but that looks like cress seed. Anyone who doesn't watch the Retro Show, that's Stu in the middle there underneath George, and that looks like cress seed. That looks like the turkey job where you fly to Turkey and you get the things put in your head. You cannot head a football for 6 months. That's what that looks like. I didn't realise you had hair, Stu. Much apologies. And Steve Hasty, that photograph that they've managed to capture, that looks like that Shrek photo that does the rounds with the trolls. I tell you what, Stu, if you can edit that photograph, we can use that on Twitter at some point one day. That's very good, mate. Very good. But
fantastic.
Chris McCarthy says, doesn't Mitch look like Kevin Painter, the darts player?
Oh, fuck, what? We're all darts players now. Fuck me. Jesus.
Martin's obviously taken to watching some great TV during lockdown. He says Joe Linton was on Naked Attraction last night. I'm not going to go back and watch last night's episode of that, by the way. It'll get everybody into bother starting to look for that or Google that.
Is he big in the shower?
He's big in the shower, like Les was. Yeah. Rich Story says, did the lad see the stats in the Chronicle about distance ran in games last night? Sean Longstaff covered most distance in 9 games. Shelby and Hendrick, 4 between them. Interesting that. Yeah, talk about that, Steve.
Yeah, it is. I mean, players, there's a certain role that you have to play in midfield. I can understand this business for Shelby if he's playing deep and people say he doesn't run, but he doesn't run anyway. You know, that's not his game. Maybe if we measured the length or the distance of his passes, maybe that would for Shelby that could have a stat on its own. You know, John Joe could have a stat on his own that would sit there. That would be like, you know, how far he managed to kick a ball or ping a ball before it bounced. That would be a better.
We don't work on vicarious distance covered, mind. Jesus.
It's the only thing I can think of, Mitch. There's damn lies and statistics, and now
exactly.
Statistics I'm snookered, man.
look, man. Look how many goals you could say he is not tracking back and covering that man, and this season, I reckon you could see that as clear as day. He's one of those. The frustration with John Joe Shelby for me repeatedly is we all know what he can do with a football. Some of the things he makes look easy with a pass just aren't. And the way to decide how easy it is take a football out onto a pitch and try it yourself.
Yeah.
So, some of these little toe poke passes he does that are right onto people's toe ends are ridiculously hard to get right. You know, you and I might do 20 of them and get one of them right. And he does it time and time again. There's absolutely no doubt that lad can do stuff with a football that a lot of people can't. My irritation with him is he's just got no game awareness at all. He tries those passes in situations where the percentage ball's a better ball. He tries those passes in situations like, take, for example, the goal we conceded against Wolves. Why did he have to take that quick free kick? There was no need to. There was no sense to it. Surely the percentage game was to get the big lads up from the back and pop the ball into the box. We're 1-0 up. We've just made a change. Let's get everybody organised, regroup, pop the ball in the box and take it from there. No. Quick free kick, up the other end, we concede. And that's something, that's not just in that game. We can go back through the season, I'm quite sure, and see instances where he's done something where he's tried a Hollywood ball where if that had come off, it would have been spectacular, not just good. And it didn't, and it ended up with a ball in the back of our net or a chance where the keeper's making a good save. And that's my problem with Shelby. There's an utter lack of game awareness. If he had game awareness, I would probably forgive his lack of ground covered. You know, I've had a conversation today with your Jed about Sonny and the role he wants to play in as he's developing from a sweeper into what's he going to be, you know. And this double pivot formation seems to be super popular at the minute. And you need somebody who's more like the Hayden character who can play a good ball and split a defence, but is going to do the work and cover the ground, and somebody like Shelby who can take the ball deep and play a killer pass and do something special. So I think we'd forgive Shelby that lack of ground covered if he had more awareness of when is the time to play the special ball. He just wants to seem to play at every pass.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets with the bother. You know, again, about stats about covering ground and who runs the hardest. In a normal season and in a normal team, I don't think it would make that much difference. But we need that effort right now. We as fans need the reassurance from the players that you care enough to bust a gut for us. And I think that now, when we're scrapping for points, because we are, is you need that more than somebody trying to play a 30-yard crossfield ball with the outside of his foot, for me.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mitch. I think you're right. And what we also want is we don't want the what we also want is we don't want. what we don't want is a midfield that'll just stand off. We want a midfield that will challenge when the opposition gets the ball. We want to see them hit. We want to see that tackle go in. And once the tackle's gone in, we want to see that ability for the loose ball to be then picked up and then that transitional play move into an attacking form. That's where we're lacking. And it's the same at the back. We don't have any transitional play. It doesn't exist at the moment. And when it does happen, it happens so slow and methodical that the opposition have regrouped anyway. And that's a frustrating part of the game. So as you say, yeah, you can run and run and run. But if you're just running into blind alleys, and if you're just running for the sake of it, you might as well be a 10,000 metre runner and go for Tokyo 2021 rather than being a footballer. You know, if that's what you can offer.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in about Stu Penman's hair. It's painted on, says Gary Milligan. Joe Walker just says Cressy. He's laughing at that. Brian H says leather zipper to bikini, only £1. I'm sure that's Mr. Ramen.
It's Mr. Ramen. It's Mr. Ramen.
Mr. Ramen next to the motorbike shops.
Near the motorbike shops for £1.
I'm glad we didn't attempt the accent, because that would have been probably shutting the channel down. Yeah, exactly. It's not ain't half hot, mum.
There should have been a blue plaque for him, shouldn't there? Mr. Ramen should have a blue plaque on the quayside.
I'd agree.
Road.
I would agree.
I mean, definitely.
We'll go into Gadgie's question after we have done my little section. Yep, Troll of the Week. It's been a quiet week for me. So I've had to actually go looking for something, which normally I get something sent to us. This one did pop up this week though, and it just tickled us. Actually, made us laugh. Yep, who the hell is Steve Wraith? A lot of hot air. Thanks, Stuart Mel Wilson. You're trolling. I love that. Just straight to the point. And actually, it was a conversation which actually had nothing to do about me. It was about journalists. It's that misconception that I'm actually a journalist. I'm not a journalist, but Stu Mel Wilson, your troll of the week. I do love that. Mark Byers says Mo Farah would run a lot of midfield, doesn't he? He can play football. 100% right. And this one, following on from our stuff earlier, Tim Cairn says Tony Cunningham was a bit of a lad in the shower, according to Gaza.
Hey.
Brilliant. Gadgie, let's go down this route. He says, in the event we are relegated, what players do you keep, get rid of? It's a given that ASM, Almiron, Wilson, Hayden are too good to be playing championship football, so we'll probably leave. I mean, it's something we're going to have to start looking at. I guess, first and foremost, the players who are out of contract, Steve, are going to be the ones that are going to be the big issue. They're not going to sign a new one, are they?
Well, no. And so that straight away, that's a rebuilding job for whoever is the manager at that particular time. You know, so...
Will it be Steve Bruce, do you think? I mean, if we get relegated, will Steve Bruce still be here? Because Ashley still wants to sell the club and he doesn't want to spend money to get rid of the manager.
Well, if we get relegated and Ashley's still owning the football club, then yeah, I expect Steve Bruce will still be the manager. Otherwise, Ashley would have moved quicker. He would have moved this season. He would have moved 3 months ago, because he would have said, you know what, Steve Bruce is not the manager for me. If he goes right to the end of the season, gets relegated, doesn't have the takeover, and then sacks Steve Bruce, it's like, what? How does that fit in? Where's your logic there? There's more logic to him going, you know what? Now's your chance to show us what you can do, and you can bring us back up again, and you'd probably then invest as well. And this is the crazy conundrum that you have with Mike Ashley, isn't it? This is the craziness that none of us can get our heads around, that none of us can understand. And so, yes, I would imagine that Steve Bruce, if we get relegated, will remain the manager if Mike Ashley is still the owner. And then who does that leave? I think he's already given Clark an extension on his contract, hasn't he? They give him a new contract. So there's a player that was out of contract. Fernandez, there was talk. I think his contract's up. But I'll add another name to that list, Steve, which was Dubravka. Dubravka would be away. He's a player that would be away. Yeah, right. Almiron, I can say Almiron, his agent was crying back in January about his position at the football club. So you can see Almiron suddenly heading off to somewhere like Spain. San Maximin, you know what? He's in France at the minute. He's got an injury. I'm laughing at what Mitch said, because the tweets that I got, when I put it up, the response that I got was, I was told, well, he's doing X, he's doing Y. And my response was, well, you're making it up now, because you actually don't know. You don't know that he's at Clairefontaine getting trained in fitness. You don't know he's in an old club. You don't know that he's got a fitness coach with him. I'd be surprised if we see the bloke playing for Newcastle.
Steve, I'll tell you something. I know he's not at Clairefontaine, because I know the dentist that looks after everybody at Clairefontaine.
Exactly. Yeah.
She's also a member of the European Academy of Sports Dentistry, like I am.
There you go. That was a good link, that, wasn't it? We did well there. But you know, I'd be surprised. He's out injured. He's not doing anything for the injury. And this is what upset us, because you get accused of making something up, or you get accused of saying something that for the sake of it, and then the response is, "But he's doing this and he's doing that." And my simple response was, "But you don't know that. At least I knew he was gone." And he wasn't there. You don't know that he's taking a fitness coach. You don't know he's gone to an old club. You don't know what he's actually doing. You're making presumptions that that's what he's doing, because that's what you would expect a professional footballer to be doing. But at the same time, you'd expect a professional footballer, especially in the current COVID situation, to remain at his club, to be utilising the fitness coaches that we have at the club, the medical professionals that we have at the club, because that's their job, because that's what we pay them for. These are your thoroughbred horses. You don't then send them out to pasture with somebody else. You stay within the stable, and you get them fit, and you manage them, and you watch them, especially in this current climate of COVID. You're watching your players like a hawk, because it was COVID that decimated you in the first place, according to Steve Bruce. And yet we've got players. And does that mean that Alan Saint-Maximin is a difficult bloke to manage? Is he now just simply doing his own thing? He got the extension on his contract. Has he simply just decided, I can just do what I like? I'm off, because it sounds like that if the club didn't know that he was even there. And this is the out of control situation. But please don't come up with assumptions or suggestions and try and make out that it's true. Yes, it may well be happening. He may well be doing that. But until you've got the proof that it's happening, you cannot really come out and discuss that with any sense of confidence, quite frankly. And as Mitch says, we know he's not in Clairefontaine, so there's the first one blown out of full proportion. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Steve, I have no problem with him going back to France at the minute.
No.
What's your take on that, Mitch? Lee Taylor says, do you think Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser and Jamal Lewis would leave the club, considering they got relegated last season with Bournemouth and Norwich? I mean, they didn't want to stay and try and get their other teams up. Why should they stay at Newcastle?
Well, it's a good question. It depends what clauses are in the contract and how things are written. The last time we got relegated, we were surprised by some of the people who hung around. And so I'm open-minded to be surprised again by some of those who may want to hang around. The other thing we're not factoring in here is, again, something me and Steve, I know we're boring gobshite sometimes, but we'll go on and on and on about the impact of COVID on finances in football. We've had this week, and this has flown under the radar a little bit, Championship clubs getting scared again, because they're just realising that the deal that Parry cut for them with the Premier League wasn't a rabbit out of a hat, as Steve very eloquently put. It was a dead cat dressed as a rabbit. And there's still 10, 11 Championship clubs who are in severe financial distress. They've been financially mismanaged so badly. I was talking to a Sheffield Wednesday fan this week out here, patient of mine, who on the back of the accounts, which show, which initially seemed to suggest that we've been paid $6.5 million in compensation, what have you. But I know the Chronicle cleared that up. But either way, he's saying that there were deducted points for late submissions of accounts and all sorts, and he's late again, and the current owner doesn't seem to give a flying F. There's a number of Championship clubs which are in real trouble. And the question is, where would some of these players go? Because it's going to impact Premier League, Liverpool have only really made profits from big sales abroad. That aren't going to happen because the teams in Europe that have been buying their players won't be buying their players, and that knock-on effect will trickle down. So some of them on big contracts might not get those contracts anywhere else, and so they'll sit tight and say thank you very much. And that's actually where, because we've been we've been frugal under Ashley, shall we say. The irony is that might actually leave we in a little bit of a better position than so many other clubs. I think we've got to see the impact of the next few weeks on football and football finances again coming up, because the Championship clubs seem to be shitting themselves again, because they're the ones who've missed out mostly. That's where, with say the Mackhams, for example, being in League One, actually did them a favour under this new deal, because they got more financial help that they would have had they stayed in the Championship or got promoted to the Championship last season. I know they have their problems of their own. They all think they've got this fantastic new owner. That still, in my opinion, is a shuffling of the deck chairs on the Titanic to keep the taxman away for a little bit longer. But that's just a personal opinion on the way that their deal's been done. There's still a number of questions there for me. And this is football finance at the moment. And you've got to factor that in about whether a player's going to stay or not, because his agent's going to want the best deal possible. And you've got to look at, right, who's interested in these players and what are they prepared to pay them versus what do they get if they just sit tight and stay where they are. And Wilson, Fraser, Lewis, I think, are absolutely in that category. So, yeah, there's a lot more going on than just if we're getting relegated, we've got players out of contract, etc., and players who might want to leave, but might find that if they leave, they're on 50% of the salary. And are they going to do that? Are they prepared to do that? And it depends on. We're now going to start to ask some of these players what matters most to you, your career or your finances. Bearing in mind, if a professional footballer's career is short, as we keep being told by people from the PFA, their career's short, they should be entitled to gather as much as they can while they're in that short period of time. Will agents lead them away? Because the agents want to get them away. Agents want to get them away because that's the only way the agents get paid. But if you've got somebody who's prepared to pay a transfer fee, whether they've got release clauses based on relegation or not, the transfer fees won't be small. In an era where money's being squeezed out of the game and clubs are in financial distress, I don't know. I think there's a lot more to this than the surface. A relegation this season will be a more complex thing than a relegation in a usual season. Very, very, very difficult to call, mate. In my opinion, very difficult to call.
Brian H, you made us laugh with that one. He says, to find the mole, we need to keep digging. You're right, mate. Lots of suggested 11s flying around Twitter. Lee Taylor's put one up. Dubravka, Kraft, Lascelles, Clark, Dummett, Hayden, Shelby, Willock, Joelinton, Gale and Fraser. Yeah, I've seen that one, mate. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. A lot of people asking about Amanda Staveley's statement that the Chronicle reported today. Well, obviously when you have a court case, you're going to have costs. So it's an expensive case to take, especially if you're going in against someone like Barkley. So I think it's just the invoice which she needs to pay, which I think she knew about anyway. Again, doesn't affect the takeover. Steve, the other story as well, which circulated this week, is an old one. Case of a journalist once again repeating something that was dealt with 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was PIF linked with Inter Milan. Which it was a nothing story, and for me, there was an interest, but nothing more until Newcastle's deal either goes through or collapses. Yeah,
absolutely. The Inter Milan's an interesting one. Inter Milan have had the same shirt sponsors for 20 odd years. Pirelli, yeah. They've pulled away. The Serie A, there's been an interest in Serie A with Saudi Arabia in terms of the TV rights for quite a while. They're owned by Suning, a Chinese company who have literally just closed everything down football-wise in China. Closed their club down, closed their women's club down, closed their junior clubs down, literally completely shut up shop because they were basically a domestic appliance company that decided that we're gonna expand and we're gonna move into everything, and paid a ridiculous amount of money for Milan a couple of years ago, and now the Chinese government's turned around and going, you bring it all back. I wouldn't be surprised that there has been that whisper. We've seen it, that there's a whisper that PIF were interested. But the whisper I got was that it wasn't interested in buying. It was basically a very,
It's a
very
minority
short-term
stake.
interest in, well, yes, a minority stake, but mainly a loan to help Sunning get themselves through until such time as somebody does come in and buy Milan. And football finances are all over the place. And you mentioned the championship there, Mitch. This percentage, this percentage of salary to turnover. You never believe some of the figures that are coming out.
Mate, I've seen them. I've seen them.
Preston North End, 163%.
Yeah,
percentage
turnover.
Right. Sheffield Wednesday. You mentioned Sheffield Wednesday. Theirs was 160%. Then you got Ipswich. I know Ipswich have struggled, but Ipswich apparently have been losing £700,000 a month for about the last 10 years. That was what I had seen. A colossal amount of money.
Mate.
And then you got West Ham United, who have just, they've got. I think that the loss of West Ham have made is something like 160 million, but even their player salary ratio to turnover was 94%. Now, the one thing that we can say about Ashley is he kept the percentage of salary to turnover at around about, I think it was 58% for Newcastle, and even then he said it was too much. But the finances are going to be hit massively, absolutely massively. You're dead right. And not just here, but all over. And that brings us back to the point that you made about the likes of Lewis and Fraser and Wilson, and they just came and they probably, they've already been relegated once. Would they want to stay? Two of those players out of three, I'll ask the question, if they didn't want to stay, who would buy them? Who would pay silly money? Because Newcastle, these two of the three, well, all three of them are on at least 4-year deals. But who? And I know that Fraser would have a value. Wilson would have a value. But I'm asking the question: who would buy Fraser, and who would buy Lewis on what they've seen this season?
True.
That's what people are going to look at, and I think there's going to be. This is where it's going to be difficult. If we do go down, who's going to buy our players? Are we going to have to give them away? Are we going to have to clear the decks, and then we're going to have to start again? Or are we going to turn around to those players and say, "Hey, mate, you're on a 4-year contract, regardless of what league." There was no provision in your contract that said we could reduce your wages if you're in the lower division. But there's also nothing in your contract that says that you can't play in that division. So you go down with a ship and you come back with a ship.
I remember us having a Zoom conversation with someone, and they were telling us they'd look at West Ham because, quote unquote, they were a well-run club. And I think at that point, their wages to turnover was 89%. And me and you just sort of just went deadly silent.
Yeah.
We're like, that's well-run? Really?
Yeah.
It's gobsmacking the perception people have of what's a well-run football club. You run any business at anything like 60 to 70% wages turnover ratio, you'll last 18 months in any other business. And we're being told that clubs at 70% plus are well run. What a joke! What an absolute joke!
Quick question from Derek on the screen there, Mitch. What's your questions on the Mackems takeover? He's interested.
The biggest one's the continued involvement of Madrox, which is Donald's company, and how much do they actually still retain ownership of? And the suggestion, because the biggest hold up with ratifying the takeover was that Madrox had to demonstrate that they had the money to put into the club to keep their part of the club running for the next 2 years. And I don't know how they've managed to do that, because they don't. And I think the buyers had to take a bigger percentage, but it smacks of Stuart Donald wanting to run the club with somebody else's money again. The way they bought the club based on ring fencing parachute payments to Ellis Short. Because you've got to remember, when he bought the club, he only put 5 million of his own money in. And yet they were allowed to buy the club based on that Ellis Short was going to take all of the parachute payments for 2 years. and they didn't envisage dropping into League One, obviously, at that point too. And so that for me is the biggest one. The continued involvement of Sartori, who took 20 million out of the club, and they said he would pay it back, yet there's no evidence that it has been paid back at all. And the complex relationship between Sartori's wife, and the Dreyfus family within certain circles in French football, where there was questions about certain elements of how I think it was Sartori's wife's father used to own Monaco, and there was questions over the way he ran Monaco. Certainly financial impropriety was brought up on more than one occasion. And also when the Dreyfus family owned Marseille, there was questions and investigations into their relationship with Adidas, and how certain deals were done. And I know, obviously, I know this from talking to some red and white mates as well, who still remain concerned about Donald's continued connection with the club, because it isn't a clean break at all. Isn't a clean break at all. And they were the first club to get involved with lobbying the government about letting HMRC payments go. In fact, I think, wasn't it Charlie What's-His-Face was the only football signatory on one of the letters to the government. So why was he so keen to get that letter written and be a signatory on it when there was only one club who had an official as a signatory on that letter? And the time it took to ratify it suggests to me there's been a lot of and it doesn't just suggest it to me, it suggests to other people in football who we speak to regularly, Steve and I, that there's been some sort of creative accounting happening to make it happen. It's bearing in mind we were told at one point, maybe it's a year ago, they were at any time 2 weeks from going out of business, and they've managed to scrape this through by the skin of their teeth. And I think all they've done is kick that can down the road for a little bit longer, because look, a fair play to them and good luck to them, and good luck to them this weekend in that Pizza Cup final.
I forgot about that. Yeah, there's a bit of football I'll watch.
And that's, for their fan base, that may be something fantastic to give them a boost, because they haven't had a lot of that recently.
Well, look, they've been to Wembley. They've been to Wembley more times than we have. It might not have. I think they've been to this. Is the second time they've been to this Pizza Cup final or whatever it is, and they've been to the playoffs as well. I mean, they haven't had a great time there, but I mean, you'd love to be able to go, wouldn't you?
There's a load of questions remain about it's basically, in a nutshell, in a single sentence, it's the continued involvement of Madrox with the club, and what that relationship is the scary bit for them, because it's not clear.
Okay, because it's a slightly shorter show tonight, we have got a couple of things to get in, and as always, thank you to qtechshop.co.uk. We have got another prize, so over the next few weeks there will be a clue, and you have to make sure that you get that clue written down, jotted down, and then there'll be another clue next week. The prize this month is 4 tickets to Snow White Panto at Whitley Bay Playhouse on Saturday the 4th of December at 1 o'clock. So that's 4 tickets to pantomime, which is something which none of us really got a chance to go to. I've been in one, of course. So the clue this week is this. There we go, Alwyn.
Right.
So make sure you write that down, and we will be back with next week's clue. Thank you to qtechshop.co.uk for that, and a big shout out to our sponsors, and a big shout out to everybody watching. Over 700 watching again tonight, which is always amazing. We'll never take you for granted. Thanks very much. Spider VPN, big shout out to those guys who've been with us for the last couple of months. Geordie Riffs, premium guitar lessons for beginners and children, guitar repairs and service and recording studio. Their website is www.geordieriffs.co.uk, Facebook Geordie Riffs Official. Please give that Instagram a follow. They do really want to boost on their Instagram. So if you get onto Instagram, if you're on there, then go on and follow at Geordie Riffs. Give me a follow on there as well, at Steve Wraith. But Instagram, they are desperate to try and push their business up on there, so give them a follow on there. Also a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk. They make us a pool tables and snooker tables in Wolves and Newcastle. And Jab Signature. John, I think he was watching tonight. Big shout out to John, who makes our posters and flyers. If you're a first time visitor to the channel, please subscribe by hitting that little banner in the bottom right hand corner. It is free to subscribe, no hidden costs. Hit the thumb up to like the video and give it a share as well. That goes to your social media. And if you missed the show, you can always catch up on your podcast provider such as iTunes and Spotify. Tomorrow I am having a day off, but that doesn't mean the stuff changes, the action changes on the channel. We've got this little special, we recorded this last year. And it's a special with Gibbo and Supermac, and it's looking back at the 1976 Cup final run. So it isn't live; it's a pre-record, but we did this before Christmas, and fantastic show. So give it a watch. 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Gibbo and Supermac talking about that wonderful run to the League Cup final and then the final itself. Well worth a watch. Over an hour tomorrow night, so give that a watch, and it gives me a night off. We're getting close to the team being announced, so we'll keep an eye out for that. And
can we go for that one, Steve? Now, can we go for the team?
Go on then.
Can we say that Gale's the only change?
Is it the only change? Because I don't know. I've not seen it yet, lads. I'm busy.
That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing Gale's the only change.
Well, let's have a look.
Which is surprising because I thought Manquillo was going to play.
I thought Manquillo was going to be back. Aye.
Let's have a look, lads. See,
I have a feeling it's going to come in with Gale as the only change.
it's not up yet, lads. Team news coming at 7 o'clock. We've got 1 minute to go, but yeah, I mean, we'll keep you up to date as soon as possible. We'll do tweet of the we'll do our final thing that we do each week. Well, we've got two actually. We've got to get through Toon Stato as well. I forgot about that. Yeah, we've got to do. Tweet of the week, where Steve Hasty picks the very best tweets that are being out there on the Twitter sphere amongst the fan base. Got a few here whilst I try to find the team out. There we go, Steve.
There we are. It's Spenny Mag. I wish Mr. Gibson was in the dressing room. And it's the quote from the Chronicle that John Gibson put up. We've got to win it. No ifs or buts. No excuses. The time for excuses is gone. Get out there, get the job done, and let's see some backbone. You're representing a great club and great fans. Show it. And you know what? That was good enough for me. A quote like that from Gilwood. That should be up in the dressing room for the rest of the season. That quote.
Yeah, it should be. Good one. And this one.
There you go, Stan. We've been prepared for this since you walked through the door, Steve, like a slow car crash. And it was Steve Bruce's quote, which was we have to try and take as much points as we can. We have to be prepared for it to go to the wire. The wire. The relegation battle. That just, dear me. It was a couple of months ago, it was 10th place, lads. Now we're going to the wire. And this is a classic. This is the one we all remember, isn't it, against Villa? We haven't lost at Villa at home since 2005. What a game that was! I remember watching that one from the top of the stand in the level 7. I had my cousin over from Canada, Brendan, who watches the show. And Brendan sat in my seat, and I went up into level 7. And I couldn't make out who it was that fighting. I thought it was us fighting Villa, the Villa player. You know, I couldn't understand what was going on. It wasn't until I got back to the Strawberry and the lads explained what was happening that you suddenly realised. You know.
Last one.
It's a winner. Looking forward to waking up on a Saturday morning with NUFC having already ruined the weekend. Something that we've already spoken about. But you know what, Rob M, you're probably right, mate. You're probably right. I think that you summed up how we're all feeling at the moment.
Definitely great stuff, and that is your.
You know what it is? That sums up the lads from the States I've been talking to this week.
Yeah.
They can't be asked to watch the game because they get up at like first thing in the morning with breakfast and it's ruined their day.
Oh,
there we go. Dubravka in goal, Emil Kraft, Jamal Lascelles captaining the team, Kieran Clark, Paul Dummett, Isaac Hayden, John Joe Shelby, Joe Willock, Ryan Fraser, Joe Linton and Dwight Gale. And on the bench, Darlow, Richie, Hendrick, Manquillo, Sean Longstaff, Andy Carroll, Lewis Fernandez and Murphy. So well done, Steve. Got a good bit of information there. The Villa team: Martinez, El Hamadi, Konza, Mings is captaining them. Target, McGinn, Douglas Luiz, Jay Ramsey, Traore, Watkins and Trezeguet. And Heaton, Cash, Engels, Taylor, Nakamba, Sanson, Barkley, Ghazi and Davis on the bench. Sure, what do you make of the starting lineup, Mitch?
Well, Steve called it. For me, I'd have Manquillo in. If he's fit and fit enough to be on the bench, start him. For me. Other than that, I think Joe Linton was never going to get taken out. Although, to be fair, I'm probably one in a minority here. I didn't think he was that bad in the last game. That chance when he was through and he tried to square it to Fraser. He got penalties for that, but I think if he then put his right foot through it and missed or been saved, he got penalties for that as well. How do you win? I don't think you can. Let's hope Gale is played as a 9, not a false 9 or a top of a diamond. Let's hope that the formation's been tweaked to accommodate the striker.
Yep. Steve, your take on the team? You called it.
Yeah, it all depends on how they play Gale or how they play to Gale. Gale is your fox in the box. Gale's the man who will get your goal if you lay the ball onto him in the box. But if you're not going to feed him in the box, if you're going to feed him out on the right wing or on the left wing, or you're going to feed him deep, coming and expecting to hold the ball up, you're not going to get that. It's going to be up to the likes of Fraser to get down that line, Joe Linton to get down that line, Willock to support him. If you're setting up the team to do that type of football and play that style of game, then yes, fine. But you've got to get the byline, you've got to get the crosses, and you've got to hit him early, and you've got to get that man, and the ball's got to be in the box when you give it to him. That's what Dwight Gale is built for. That's what Dwight Gale was born for, and that's what Dwight Gale has spent his entire career doing, scoring goals when he's in the box. Stick him out on the right wing, absolutely pointless. And I hope that the rest of the players understand that, and they've seen enough with Dwight Gale in training that they realise how to feed the man, how to give him that opportunity. Yeah, let's not beat about the bush. I'm not saying that he's the best thing since sliced bread and he's a super attacker and great. He's totally different to Wilson, but the guy can score if you feed him right, if you provide him with the right passes, if you play well, if you're playing on the front foot, and if your central defenders in your midfield are supporting each other and supporting the lads up front. Let's see what we can do. Let's just go for it. That team should go for it from the first minute, and they should be hitting them, and they should be confident enough to do that. I'm surprised Ghazi's not playing for them. Very surprised. I thought he would have been back in because he is a danger, and thank God he's not playing. But you've just got to make sure that you're not allowing the likes of El Mohammadi to come on and basically roam around like he does from that wide position as a fullback when he gets into space. And you've got to watch Watkins because he can score a goal if it's fed. No Barkley.
Watkins' movement is the big thing that worries me.
That's interesting. No Barkley. I think that the thing with Barkley is that that there's been a falling out there. I think, or there's something not right with Barkley. And it's interesting that Barkley's not there when you also haven't got Grealish. And I think, they seem to play well together, but when Grealish isn't there, Barkley's not the same player. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, because I do think he's a very, very good footballer, he's not there tonight.
Yeah, it's Joe Linton being in the team again that just always makes me scratch my head. But what can you do? Don't forget, guys, as well, we have got this wonderful gift. It's finishing tonight, so get your bids in. Last 10 minutes. Bobby Robson, 2 Bobby Robson books, 1 Bobby Robson DVD. The book is signed by Bobby Robson. Yes, it's signed to Chris because Chris donated the books. All proceeds go to the food bank. If I just double check on my Twitter account. It is a pinned tweet. You bid on the actual post itself, and if I double check, I do think it's still at 150 quid. So yeah, £150. You've got 10 minutes to bid on that. It's on my Twitter, pinned tweet, and the winning tweet at the moment is David Maudlin, who has bid 150. So anybody else fancies that? Well worth the money. They say all of the money goes to the food bank, and yeah, I mean, there's lots of great comments coming in as always. Thanks for everyone's contribution. And don't forget, the Match Day Live is continuing tonight around about 7:25. Chris Hall is running that tonight along with Daz, whilst I have a night off. Comments coming in. Mainston says, Traore and Kraft best get staff ready to untangle Kraft. With Gale and Fraser, we need the height of Joe, but nothing else. Manquillo and Ferdinand on the bench a bit. Bruce says, Trulls. Shelby and Hayden in the same roles. Again, fingers crossed Shelby turns up past 20 minutes. I mean, that's the problem. We've discussed it earlier on in the show, which Shelby turns up. Mark Bayer says, I'd have Manquillo and Fernandez in from the start if they were fit. Is Gale playing a false 9, says Stephen Mathieson. Start Manquillo, Jason says as well. Kraft versus El Mohammadi. What a battle. Joe Walker says that Fraser's due a game.
Yes.
And Mainston says as well, Hendrick makes him feel as if he could play. I mean, he runs around, but no one else. I can do that. Not many people optimistic. Ian, though, is, he says, Dwight Gale the fox in the box, or is he the mole in the hole? Very clever. Jack Sparrow says, well, looking at that team, I might smash some shots of Raki to get through this one. Your head's turning everybody to drink. And Joe Walker says 55 to 1 for John Joe to score, and it being 1-0. That isn't a bad bet. You never know. Never say never. I think it'll be another tight game. I've got to be perfectly honest, lads.
I think you're right.
Can't disagree, mate.
Yeah, I can't see it being a game for the purists either. I think it'll be one of those where essentially one goal could settle it. I think if Grealish had been playing tonight, that would have been a big difference. But as you say, with so much of that positive stuff, really this season, Villa's team is as you've already alluded to, came from Grealish, of course, came from Barkley, and came from Watkins, and now that trio has been split up. It's no wonder Villa haven't been as good as they have been in the past.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I think Douglas Luiz. I mean, he was out for a while with injury. McGinn, everybody raved about McGinn at one particular point. But again, I think they're the sort of team that you get the best out of them again when you've got Grealish there. You get the best out of Grealish, or best out of Barkley when Grealish is there. And Grealish is the hub, isn't he? He is a fantastic footballer. He's beautiful to watch. He takes so much, he does so much, and he does it with ease. And he just keeps bouncing back. You take him out the game, and he bounces back. He comes out. He's hard as nails. You can kick.
He's a snide little git, though.
Oh yeah,
he's quite happy to chuck himself to the ground.
Yeah. Gaza was snide. Gaza took so much that his game had to change, and he had to start to dish it out as well. But he can dish it out. But he's a tough little nut. And I'm delighted he's not playing tonight. To tell you the truth.
For me, it's the Hayden Shelby versus McGinn, plus the lad with a strange dyed blonde hair who plays in midfield alongside McGinn. That's the key battle tonight for me. Is who can control that. Place. It's where that who battle can control that.
If that battle takes place 5 yards in front of our back four, then you can forget it. If that battle's taking place 25 yards up from our back four, then you've got something going for you. And that's what annoys me at times, because we're playing so deep and so slow. We've always been a team that when we've got pace when we can move the ball quick and that transition happens quickly, we're deadly. We can, and we've got the players that can do it. Even in that team, there's players that can do it. But how you actually perform on the day that, and what you're going in with your mindset. If you're going in thinking it's going to be 0-0, and you're saving a 0-0, then you might as well not bother, especially when you're at home. And I know that there's no fans in the ground and all that, and people will look back and go, oh well, that it's a level playing field since the fans aren't there and there's nothing between playing at home and away. And look at Liverpool, they've lost 5 on the trot or whatever it happens to be. But it should still be an important feature if you're playing at your own ground.
The peculiarity of the Gallagher slope, you know, and the crown on the pitch, that's what's always made a difference at St James's Park. And so those things should make a difference because we play on that regularly and they don't. And so we should know how to make the most of that in our ground. I don't know if I know certainly if you look at the stats across Europe at the moment, home advantage isn't what it was.
No.
There's absolutely no doubt about that. But there's for places like St James's Park where there are, it's not a flat pitch and it's not a perfectly level pitch. It is very different. Knowing how to play a ball into the corner at the Gallagher end is very different to playing a ball into the corner at the Leazes end because of the crown and because of the slope. And so we should be taking advantage of that one way or the other. It still beggars belief for me that any team that wins the toss doesn't turn us around. So we're playing the Gallagher end first half every time. Because it's obvious when we play at Gallagher end second half, more likely or not, we're going to come at you and we're going to come at you hard in the last 10 minutes. If the crowd's there.
Yeah. Have you noticed, though, that this season, since lockdown, I can't recall seeing a team turning ends at the toss of the coin. I think the toss of the coin's become just a simple thing over who kicks off. I don't think the toss of the coin now is anything to do with a choice. Do you want to kick off or do you want to swap?
Don't seem to have any strategic input at all, do they?
No. I think it's COVID related. I think it's decided before the start. You walk that way. And you know why I think? I think because there's that added thing of taking the knee that takes a little bit more time. And I think the swap over has been done away with in exchange for the taking of the knee. And I'm not being flippant. I'm not condemning the taking of the knee or anything like that. So before anyone starts, but I think that has replaced the ability to be able to choose your end, either because it's not even as though it's been decided beforehand, you know, because Newcastle always go to Gallagher, the away team always goes to the Leazes, and they always kick down the slope in the first half, and we always kick down in this. You know what's going to happen tonight? It's all going to.
You've just set yourself up beautifully there, Steve.
Let's finish off on Matty Longstaff, lads, because it was an interesting turn of events this week. He materialised in the under-23s, and Bruce did comment about him, saying that he needs to get games now. I mean, we're coming into the crucial part of the season. Matty Longstaff was given his debut by Bruce. Didn't let him down, scoring the winner against Man United, scoring another goal against Man United at Old Trafford. Fought hard to keep him, and then doesn't play him.
Yeah.
Strange one, Mitch, isn't it?
Needs games, put him in the team, that's so.
Yeah.
You know, because I tell you now, there's times he could have contributed, I'm quite sure, more than certain other individuals have in our midfield. So, what you're doing with him? There's 100% been more than one falling out between Bruce and the Longstaff family, full stop. And that contributes to the whole losing of the dressing room, because I know that certain players were upset seeing Sean and Matty left out when the word coming out the training ground was these two are pulling up trees in training. They're outrunning everybody, they're out fighting everybody, and they're doing everything they can to get a game. And yet they weren't getting a game. And again, we'll look at the way Bruce handles players. We've called it archaic, dinosaur-like, whatever you want to call it. Sticking him in the under-23s this week and saying he needs games is, for me, Steve Bruce putting him in his place. You're 20-year-old, who do you think you are? Boom. Off to the under-23s. Yet, I'm still convinced he could contribute more to our midfield. And I'm not going to name names. I think you all know who I'm talking about. who's had games in front of him, who, other than the contribution he made early in the season, has just disappeared up his own backside and doesn't seem to be. I didn't even know Hendrick was on the bloody pitch the other week.
Yeah, crazy,
You
isn't
know,
it? Steve, what's your...
I just couldn't take it in that he was actually. And I'm like, oh yeah, he is. He's picking the starting 11. So what the hell's he done? I'm quite sure you'd have noticed bloody Matty Longstaff running around like a lunatic in the middle of the park, trying to do something for the club that he actually cares about. You know. Anyway,
Steve, what's your take on the Longstaff situation?
What I found interesting, yes, Matty does need game time, and he hasn't been getting game time. But what I found more galling was the comment by Bruce, which said that he's had a big time. I don't know whether that quote that he came. I can't remember the exact words, but it implied that it was like a big pay rise. But what he would probably try and fall back on was that he's had a big change by moving into the squad. But I thought that it was quite ambiguous by the manager, and I thought there was no need for it. I was disappointed by it because it was open ended. Matty does need game time. If you're a professional footballer and you're not getting a game, and you're not getting chosen, you're not even getting into the squad, you're not even sitting on the bench, it must be frustrating. So yes, he does need opportunities. And maybe that's something that we need to look at the entire squad with, because if you're training, but you're not getting the opportunity, so you do need some game time. We used to have reserves, but we don't have reserves anymore. We're having under 23s to play on a Tuesday afternoon every now and again. I think that's the problem. I think there's fundamentally a much bigger problem.
We suffered with this by choice previously when Keegan got rid of the reserves.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And we had players, coming into the team who maybe's not kicked a ball in anger in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we wondered why they looked a little short of match fitness and match sharpness. And now we've got this situation by decree with the under 23s. You only put so many. I mean, I know Matty doesn't matter so much because he is under 23, but you can only put so many of the senior team into that squad.
Yeah.
So you've got players who are genuinely sitting with their fingers in their arse, not getting any game time, and then you're asking them to come into the first team and perform. And it must be tough because there's no comparison between training ground and the actual game, even without the crowd in the stands. So where at one side you can see what he's saying, but you're right, Steve. He said it in a way that could have been taken in many different ways, and that was very deliberate, if you ask me.
Yeah, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help the way that the fans are at the moment. The ambiguous nature of a comment will be latched onto, and it then suddenly divide and conquer. All of that type of thing. I was awkward during the week. I posted and replied to Mark Douglas and said with that very, very particular comment on Twitter that did Bruce not have the media training when he got his coaching badges, when he did the full UEFA coaching badges, did he not have the media training bit? Did he miss that part out? Because to throw the number of times that he throws stuff out or he throws players under the bus is shocking. But then somebody pointed out that he was allegedly part of the dinosaur group that when the rules came in didn't actually have to have a coaching badge, didn't have to go through there because they'd already been established managers from a past era. So I don't even know whether that's true. I don't know how that worked, but it just begged the question: who guides you? Who do you talk to? Does your agent not speak to you? Do you not speak to the coaching staff? Do you not actually sit down and learn from your mistakes and think, you know what? How should I approach this? How should I approach this Longstaff problem? How can I make it better? And it just seems to be that he's on his own and he just blurts stuff out, and 9 times out of 10 it's under the bus.
Yeah. Congratulations to David Maudlin. He's got the winning bid. Thank you very much. £150.
Well done, Dave. Dave's a great bloke, Steve. An absolutely brilliant bloke. A good friend of mine.
And mine.
I'm absolutely delighted, and a big thanks. He's been a great support at the food bank and a great supporter to the events that you've been at, that you've organised over the years as well. And I'm absolutely delighted to think that Chris's books are going to go to Dave. Well done, Dave, and thank you for your kind donation.
Fantastic. £150 straight to the food bank. He will get in touch with Steve Hasty. Now, big shout out to Nick, who's a big fan of the show. He works at North East Flight Academy. It's North NM Aviation. He's known as Nick at NM Aviation on Twitter. Now he's donated a wonderful prize for this week's auction that goes on my Twitter page. So he sent us a message saying, I have a donation for you for the food bank and NUFC Matters with one of the companies I'm involved with, North East Flight Academy. It's a 30-minute flight from Newcastle around the city and over St James's and over to the coast. So he's donated that. Big shout out to North East Flight Academy, and I'm going to put that on Twitter tonight. So because the cost of that is usually round about £170, I'm going to start that at 50 quid. Okay, so I'll pitch in 50 quid for that. But let's be serious with this one. It's a hell of a prize. Put a bid in and see whether you're lucky. But thanks to Nick for that. Some great stuff coming in. We're getting inundated with people wanting to put stuff in, and that's great, Steve, isn't it?
Absolutely. What a fantastic prize. You imagine you get the opportunity to fly over St James's Park. I'm certain. At least to get a wonderful view of the city. Absolutely fantastic. And you know what? This is what doing this show makes it so good, because it shows you there's there are some fantastic supporters out there.
Aye.
The people who are coming in and helping the food bank and helping other people in the community. Bill's got this flag that he has dignity written on. You know what? And Newcastle fans do show dignity. It oozes out the pores of Newcastle fans and other fans around the country. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sort of saying that, but Newcastle fans, when they rally round, when they know that people need support, the dignity that we give and that we show is second to none.
And don't forget tonight, as always, you have the virtual bucket, which you can donate to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. The matchday bucket. Donate something like you do normally when you go to the match. Tomorrow, don't forget, 6 o'clock, join Gibbo and Supermac in a pre-recorded show, The Road to Wembley 1976. It'll be a cracking watch, that. And somebody mentioned earlier, the Steve Wraith, Charles Bronson interviews still coming thick and fast. We've still got a few more to go through, so if it's that floats your boat, get yourself on and have a listen to them. And good news, on Sunday I am back live again. Mick Lowes is joining me to pick out the bones of the Aston Villa game, which is on tonight. Join the Matchday Live team tonight, 7:30. Join Chris Hall and the gang as they talk you through, and I'll just leave you with a picture of my good friend whose funeral it was today. Rest in peace, Jackie.
All the best.